Chapter 12 of Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Mill Nicholson. Barnaby Rudge, A Tale of the Riots of '80 by Charles Dickens. Chapter 12. There was a brief pause in the state-room of the Maypole, as Mr Haredale tried the lock to satisfy himself that he had shut the door securely, and, striding up the dark chamber to where the screen enclosed a little patch of light and warmth, presented himself, abruptly and in silence, before the smiling guest. If the two had no greater sympathy in their inward thoughts than in their outward bearing and appearance, the meeting did not seem likely to prove a very calm or pleasant one. With no great disparity between them in point of years, they were, in every other respect, as unlike and far removed from each other as two men could well be. The one was soft-spoken, delicately made, precise, and elegant; the other, a burly, square-built man, negligently dressed, rough and abrupt in manner, stern, and, in his present mood, forbidding both in look and speech. The one preserved a calm and placid smile, the other a distrustful frown. The newcomer, indeed, appeared bent on showing by his every tone and gesture his determined opposition and hostility to the man he had come to meet. The guest who received him, on the other hand, seemed to feel that the contrast between them was all in his favour, and to derive a quiet exultation from it which put him more at his ease than ever.
"Haredale,"
said this gentleman, without the least appearance of embarrassment or reserve,
"I am very glad to see you."
"Let us dispense with compliments. They are misplaced between us," returned the other, waving his hand, "and say plainly what we have to say. You have asked me to meet you. I am here. Why do we stand face to face again?"
"Still the same frank and sturdy character, I see."
"Good or bad, sir, I am," returned the other, leaning his arm upon the chimney-piece, and turning a haughty look upon the occupant of the easy-chair, "the man I used to be. I have lost no old likings or dislikings. My memory has not failed me by a hair's breadth. You asked me to give you a meeting. I say, I am here."
"Our meeting, Haredale,"
said Mr Chester, tapping his snuff-box, and following with a smile the impatient gesture he had made, perhaps unconsciously, towards his sword,
"is one of conference and peace, I hope."
"I have come here," returned the other, "at your desire, holding myself bound to meet you when and where you would. I have not come to bandy pleasant speeches or hollow professions. You are a smooth man of the world, sir, and at such play have me at a disadvantage. The very last man on this earth with whom I would enter the lists to combat with gentle compliments and masked faces is Mr Chester. I do assure you, I am not his match at such weapons, and have reason to believe that few men are."
"You do me a great deal of honour, Haredale," returned the other, most composedly, "and I thank you. I will be frank with you."
"I beg your pardon. Will be what?"
"Frank, open, perfectly candid."
"Ha!" cried Mr Haredale, drawing his breath. "But don't let me interrupt you."
"So resolved am I to hold this course," returned the other, tasting his wine with great deliberation, "that I have determined not to quarrel with you, and not to be betrayed into a warm expression or a hasty word."
"There again," said Mr Haredale, "you have me at a great advantage. Your self-command
is not to be disturbed when it will serve my purpose, you would say," rejoined the other, interrupting him with the same complacency. "Granted, I allow it, and I have a purpose to serve now. So have you. I am sure our object is the same. Let us attain it like sensible men who have ceased to be boys some time. Do you drink?" 'With me friends,' returned the other. 'At least,' said Mr Chester, 'you will be seated.' 'I will stand,' returned Mr Haredale impatiently, 'on this dismantled, beggared hearth, and not polluted, fallen as it is, with mockeries. Go on.' 'You are wrong, Haredale,' said the other, crossing his legs and smiling as he held his glass up in the bright glow of the fire. 'You are really very wrong. The world is a lively place enough, in which we must accommodate ourselves to circumstances, sail with the stream as glibly as we can, be content to take froth for substance, the surface for the depth, the counterfeit for the real coin. I wonder no philosopher has ever established that our globe itself is hollow. It should be, if nature is consistent in her works.' 'You think it is, perhaps?' 'I should say,' he returned, sipping his wine, 'there could be no doubt about it. Well, we, in trifling with this jingling toy, have had the ill luck to jostle and fall out. We are not what the world calls friends, but we are as good and true and loving friends for all that, as 9 out of every 10 of those on whom it bestows the title. You have a niece, and I a son. A fine lad, Haredale, but foolish. They fall in love with each other, and form what this same world calls an attachment, meaning a something fanciful and false like the rest, which, if it took its own free time, would break like any other bubble. But it may not have its own free time, will not, if they are left alone, and the question is, shall we too, because society calls us enemies, stand aloof, and let them rush into each other's arms, when, by approaching each other sensibly, as we do now, we can prevent it, and part them? 'I love my niece,' said Mr Haredale, after a short silence. 'It may sound strangely in your ears, but I love her.' 'Strangely, my good fellow!' cried Mr Chester, lazily filling his glass again, and pulling out his toothpick. 'Not at all. I like Ned too, or, as you say, love him. That's the word among such near relations. I'm very fond of Ned. He's an amazingly good fellow, and a handsome fellow, foolish and weak as yet, that's all. But the thing is, Haredale, for I'll be very frank, as I told you I would at first, independently of any dislike that you and I might have to being related to each other, and independently of the religious differences between us, and damn it, that's important, I couldn't afford a match of this description. Ned and I couldn't do it. It's impossible.' 'Curb your tongue, in God's name, if this conversation is to last,' retorted Mr Haredale fiercely. 'I have said I love my niece. Do you think that, loving her, I would have her fling her heart away on any man who had your blood in his veins?' 'You see,' said the other, not at all disturbed, 'the advantage of being so frank and open. Just what I was about to add, upon my honour. I'm amazingly attached to Ned. Quite dote upon him indeed. And even if we could afford to throw ourselves away, that very objection would be quite insuperable. I wish you'd take some wine.' 'Mark me,' said Mr Haredale, striding to the table and laying his hand upon it heavily. 'If any man believes, presumes to think, that I, in word or deed, or in the wildest dream, ever entertained remotely the idea of Emma Haredale's favouring the suit of any one who was akin to you, in any way, I care not what, he lies. He lies, and does me grievous wrong in the mere thought.' 'Haredale,' returned the other, rocking himself to and fro as in assent, and nodding at the fire, 'it's extremely manly, and really very generous in you, to meet me in this unreserved